Many thanks to PPA for sponsoring this week's video. Did you know there is over 52 different sliders inside of Lightroom? Actually, I really have no idea. I suppose that could be right though, but it was just a total guess. I didn't actually count each and every one of them, but regardless of what the exact number is, there's a ton of different ways to manipulate certain areas of your photos, so it's not super surprising at all that a couple of sliders are missed from time to time. And from my experience, most of these, I guess, lesser known sliders are what I'd consider to be not super valuable or non-essential. But there is one that I find incredibly beneficial that most people aren't even aware even exists inside of Lightroom. Now, I'm not certain, actually, I guess I'm a bit puzzled, honestly, as to why Lightroom doesn't have this slider in the basics section somewhere between maybe the highlights and the slider, in the shadow slider. But anywho, in this video, I'll show you not only how to access this helpful tool, but also how you can use this to add that pop to many of your outdoor and landscape photos that'll ultimately create a more balanced and realistic image. So this is a photo from my recent trip to Colorado. I absolutely love the light. Just kind of raking across these golden aspens or these golden trees right through here. And of course, the snow-capped mountains in the background definitely adds to it. There's just something about snow-capped mountains in autumn colors like peanut butter and jelly. It just goes together and it works absolutely fantastic. So I really do like the way that this photo has come out. So if I come up here to the develop module, if I come over here to the histogram and you hover over certain areas of the histogram, you can see what that area of the histogram represents. So if I come over here to the far right side, you can see where it says whites and it says plus 45. And if I drop down the basics section here, you can see that I have the white slider set at plus 45. Now what's really cool is you can click on this and you can drag it to the left and to the right, and you can see that it's impacting the white slider below. And it's also showing what's happening to the histogram as I make that adjustment. So that's pretty cool to be able to make those adjustments right on the histogram in real time and see how that histogram is being affected. It's a great way to become more comfortable with the histogram as well if you're not already comfortable using it. But you can also come over here a little bit further, and then this area right here represents the highlights. And you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of the histogram, I have highlights set at minus 49. Once again, I can just click right on this section here, and I can drag it to the left to decrease the highlights, and you can see that that is the corresponding change is affecting the histogram that way. Or I can move it over to the right. You can see that the histogram is starting to move over to the right. And the same thing on the far left side. So if I come over here to the black point, I can click that and drag that all the way to the right, or I can select, or I can click, I can click it and drag all the way over to the left. And you can see, once again, you can see that happening in real time. And finally, right here on the shadows, if I select that, I can move that to the right, and you can see that the shadow area of the histogram moves to the right. I can also move it all the way to the left, and you can see that the shadow area to the left is impacted as well. Or I could say you can see the histogram moving over towards the left. But there's a huge gap in the center here. And this area here is what Lightroom is calling exposure. And you can see right here that the majority of the histogram is consumed with this area that Lightroom is calling exposure. Now what's interesting is if I click on this area here, and you can see that it's impacting the exposure slider below, and I can move it all the way to the right. But what's interesting is it's impacting every part of the histogram. And same thing if I go the other way, if I move it all the way to the left, you can see that the entire histogram is being impacted. If I move it all the way over, the image is completely dark. So that center area of the histogram deemed exposure really isn't only affecting the middle part of the histogram, it's affecting every part of the scene. And this is kind of where the problem is. That area right there, it's not super targeted at all. So, and that area right there is the midtones part of the histogram. And I'm not really sure why Lightroom calls it exposure. It probably has to do with the fact that Lightroom does not have a dedicated tool to impact just that area of the histogram. But I should say, Lightroom actually does have a tool, which is the purpose of this video, but it's not easy to find or locate. So if I come down here to the color grading section, and we'll start over here with shadows. So if you're not familiar with what color grading is, it basically gives you the ability to tone certain areas of your photos certain colors. So if I, just real quick rundown on this, if I wanted to tint the shadows, this blue color right through here, you can see that it tinted all the shadows that color as well. So not what we're going to do in this video though, so I'm going to undo that. But you have the ability to change the hue to whatever you want that tone to be. You can also change the saturation level, but there's this slider right through here that says luminance, and this is kind of where the real magic happens here. So if I take this luminance, remember we're on the shadows section here, and I take this luminance, which is the brightness value, the luminance, and I drag it all the way to the right, you can see that it increased the shadows. And if I bring it down, it darkened the shadow. I shouldn't say increase the shadows, it kind of opened up the shadows. And when I bring that luminance all the way down to -100, you can see that those shadows are much, much darker now. Now, same thing up here, I'm gonna click on the highlights. If I bring the luminance slider all the way down to the left, you can see that it brought the highlights down. If I bring it all the way to the right, you can see it kind of brighten it up. And if I kind of rock this back and forth, you can see that it's impacting the highlights right through there. Let me reset that. Now you also have one called the midtones. And once again, the midtones has this luminance slider here. So this is kind of how you can get away by having, or I should say, you can use a tool that specifically targets just the midtones inside of Lightroom, which before this luminance slider inside of color grading, there was absolutely no way to do it unless you wanted to create some type of a custom tone curve, which this is definitely a much easier solution than that. So if I come over here to the luminance slider in the midtone section and I bring this up and down, look at the middle area of the histogram right through here. So as I bring it up and as I bring it down, you can see that it is only affecting those midtones area of the scene. So you can see that the shadows are not moving around a lot. You can see that the highlights aren't moving around a whole lot. It's just impacting that middle area of the histogram, which is wildly beneficial because like I mentioned before this, there was no way to really, or I should say easily, create a targeted midtones adjustment. And as you could see in the histogram, a lot of times the majority of the information in the histogram is contained within that midtone section. So to be able to have a slider or a tool available to you to accurately and targetedly in an accurate way only impact that area is very, very beneficial. So I'm going to kind of boost this up quite a bit, and it will toggle this entire section on and off so you can see it. So this is before the midtones adjustment and after, before and after, and you can see how it kind of really just adds that little pop to it. It's not a huge drastic difference, but it really does make a substantial change to your overall photograph. And in my mind, or my eye, it creates a more realistic and a more pleasing image. Now, I've got another really good example right here. Let's close this down. I want you to be able to see the basic section, the adjustments that I did right through here. And I love this image. You got some nice autumn color right through here. This incredibly cool winding road right through here. Before I do jump right into this edit real quick though, I just want to say a big thanks to the sponsor of this week's video, which is Professional Photographers of America, or PPA for short. For a super low monthly cost, you get incredibly helpful resources such as equipment insurance, data loss recovery services, and unparalleled education. But did you know that PPA also offers unbeatable sales and marketing tools as well? These tools and resources are designed to increase your exposure and grow your understanding of marketing within a digital landscape, including ebooks created specifically for photographers, full tutorials and videos all about content creation and branding, along with customizable brochures to showcase your work more easily to clients. So be sure to check out the link in the description below for additional information and to save $25 off your PPA membership today. So in this image here, I'm going to come down here to, and like I said, you can see this kind of the basic edits I put on here real quick. I'm going to close this down and let's come over here to the color grading section. And you can see that there's a fair amount of information here in the midtones. So I'm going to, oh, we already have midtones selected right here. And if you're not aware exactly how to do this, you have this adjust section here where you can see all three of the color wheels together, midtone, shadows, and highlights, or you can click on each one individually. So this is the shadows, this is the midtones, and this is the highlights. So I'm just gonna come over here to highlights and let's just start to move this back and forth. So I'm gonna bring it up here and we'll bring it all the way down and bring it up here and bring it all the way down. And you'll notice that the color of the road, a lot of that midtone information is contained within the color of the road right through here. So if obviously the road is the most important part of this photograph, it's the visual interest, it's the overall subject of the scene, and I wanna really make that stand out. So I'm gonna bring it up a fair amount to about right here, and let's toggle this on and off. So this is before and after, before and after. And if you watch the midtones right through here, the area that Lightroom is calling exposure, watch that area. So this is before the midtones adjustment and after the midtones adjustment. Before and after. If you wanted to bring it up even more, you definitely can. And you don't always, maybe there's a certain scenario where you want to bring down the midtones. You can definitely do that as well, just by applying negative luminance right through here. But in my experience, for the majority of the images that I've used this little hack or trick on, I usually am bringing up the midtones a fair amount, and I really like the overall edit there. So this is where it started. This is where we're at right now. So this is before and after. I'm gonna go back here. I just wanna show you the before and after of this image as well. This is before all the adjustments. So this is the raw file here, and after, before and after. Just a real quick adjustment, or edit I should say. I didn't mention this before, but I just wanna show you real quick. I did put a mask for the sky up here. I put a mask on the foreground area right through here as well, kind of toggle that on and off. Just wanted to darken down this area just a little bit. Doesn't add a whole lot of value, and I think that kind of darker to lighter transition zone right there adds a lot of additional depth to the overall photograph. And then up here I added a reverse vignette, which is basically just kind of adding a radial gradient in the center and just kind of brightening that area up. And I think all of these masks together really kind of add a more focused, I should say, path for the viewer's eye to follow. Here, there's not a real clear direction, I don't think, and I think it seems a little bit more focused right here. And I pretty like the way that this one is turning out. Definitely needs a little bit more work, but I really am happy with the way that the mid-tone adjustment has turned out with this one. So this is before the mid-tone adjustment and after, before and after. And I might even come back and increase those midtones just a little bit more. But there is that, I think once you begin playing around with the midtone slider, or the luminance slider in the midtone section, I think you'll be pretty impressed with what it can do with to kind of like add that little bit of pop back into your photographs. Not every image does this work out on, but I have found that the vast majority of my photographs do need a little bit of a mid-tone boost, if you will. And I usually end up having to do this inside of Photoshop or inside of Capture One. But to be able to do it inside of Lightroom, I think is extremely, extremely beneficial. And like I said to kick off the video, I'm not 100% certain as to why it, in the basic section right here, why there isn't a highlight slider, and then right beneath it is a mid-tone slider and then a shadow slider. I have to think in some future iteration or update to Lightroom, there will be one that will be added in there because it is wildly beneficial. But in the meantime, you can definitely go down to the color grading section and go to the midtone section and use that luminance slider, and that will definitely help you out. I do hope that you enjoyed this week's video. If you have any questions, please leave those in the comments section below, and I'll be sure to get back in touch with you as soon as possible. And if you enjoyed this week's video, if you could give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already, and be sure to check out the link in the description below for additional information on a PPA membership. And as always, I really do appreciate you carving out a little bit of time in your busy day to spend it with me here. And I will see you all next Wednesday. Bye.